Hey guys. It's been a minute, hasn't it? So it's probably been either a beautiful time or a trying time, but God willing, a little bit of both. God willing, you're doing great. But for those of you who are struggling, remember we are all one. We've all chosen to be here. This is a school. We are but learning. And it is up to us to purposefully and intentionally change and shift our perspectives through practice, through rehearsal, through constantly saying, no, I am choosing a higher path. I am changing my thoughts. I am altering my path by creating a new timeline for myself, by making better choices, by making better thought processes in my head. Something looks shitty, you stop yourself and you'll look at it until you find the gratitude in it at all its possible lengths and possible ways. Until you feel better, until you feel okay, until you can breathe again and look at people all around you with love and respect. Or stay away from the ones that clearly are not on the same path you are. It's that simple. Today's reading comes from Hope Realized, a daily meditation journal for healing, growth, and transformation by Diane A. Allen. Dare to step outside of the box. I'm holding your hand. Day 43, Reassurance. Ask before asking advice or reassurance. That's the quote by Marsha B. Rosenberg. Ask before asking advice or reassurance. Reassurance is often an important part of relationships. We all could use some reassurance. You may seek it from family, friends, colleagues, or mentors. There are times when past clients have called me to say hi, and it seems that their undisclosed motive was to get reassurance and maybe some advice. They didn't ask for either, they simply asked to speak to me. When you want advice or reassurance, ask the listener in the beginning of the conversation. This is the most respectful approach. I listen with different ears. I can be your friend, your mentor, your minister, your counselor, your colleague, your consultant or teacher. Now, what I'm getting from this is, let's say someone's your boss or someone's your friend or they're both, and you're having a bad day or you're feeling attacked, whether, in my opinion, all attacks come from within and the outside is just going to mirror whatever you're feeling inside, because that's what you're going to be looking with. That's the eyes you're going to have. That's the ears you're going to be hearing from. So if you're actually able to be vulnerable enough to stop yourself and say, okay, look at the history, look at the actual experiences you have with an individual, and say to yourself, okay, I'm going to look at this from a positive standpoint. I'm going to put myself on the line by having faith in the best positive outcome. And I'm going to go to an individual and ask and speak to them with the premise that, hey, I need a good ear to better understand the situation, or I need to have you be this particular label in this situation for me, this particular standpoint. Like this lady said, if you need a friend, then ask for a friend. If you need for a mentor, that's something different, because a mentor will give it to you straight from a bird's eye perspective, from an overall perspective. A friend might pander to you more, but a mentor is going to be like, okay, not from an emotional standpoint, but from an outside point of view, they're going to say, okay, do you really want me to tell you what I'm seeing? Because I will. And that's a good friend standing in the position of a mentor, which means you have to understand that if you asked for that mentor is from that friend, that friend is not going to be pampering to you. That friend is going to give it to you straight. Or if you're asking for a counselor or a colleague, consultant, or a teacher, these are all different parts that we're playing. So if you have an individual that you know you can trust enough to be direct with, come at them by directly asking them to play a part for you so that they're free and know their boundaries enough to speak to you in a way that you're going to actually receive. Does that make sense? That's really important for relationships of any degree, to be able to communicate clearly and freely without insulting each other, without because see, if a person's like, well, you're my friend and all this history, so you got to come at me like and pamper to me, but in the situation at hand, it has actually to do with a very specific, for example, work related issue. Well, then you're going to have to step back and look at it from, well, this person, apart from being my friend, is a colleague or a coworker or a boss. So now I have to look at it from their point of view, or ask them to look at it from my point of view without being my boss. You actually have to say those things in front of the conversation, not behind it, or sure as hell not at the tail end of it trying to backpedal, because this just becomes screwed up and very convoluted, and people just put their walls up or have to really distance themselves because it's become toxic. So just a point of view, an example here. Moving on. Each role has different ears. See? By engaging with me without being clear about your needs, you may not get what you are seeking. And maybe you won't feel heard. That's where the hurt feelings comes in. That's where the convoluted feelings come in. That's when people start putting their walls up or start backing up. That's just a waste of energy and drama. So let's remember that within our own situations and ask yourself, am I playing a role here that I was asked to play, or am I just like standing in thin air, not being able to really know where I stand? If you want business advice and you call me to chat, quote unquote, that is a mismatch. Practice asking the listener for what you want so both of you are clear and you can end the conversation successfully. And both of you feeling heard and both of you feeling respected. Reassurance is an emotional experience, and without asking for this type of response, you may not get it if the listener thinks you want advice or just a quote unquote listening ear. Daily application for today. Notice the many ways you ask for what you want from others. Are you as clear as you would like to be? And by that, if you're just standing in your own world and presuming that other people feel the way you do, you need to stop. Biggest thing that has helped me to get out of victim mode was to realize that what I think, what I've bought to be the truth, just on the interior center of myself, I have to always stop and go, did I buy this? Did somebody say this and I just believed it? And did that ultimately lead to me creating an entire point of view standpoint of my experience that I've mirrored onto the other person, not stopping to think that, hey, this person most likely is coming from a completely different point of view. And better yet, I've come from a point of view that I bought off of something else, and other assumptions and other presumptions. And I've now not only stopped to authenticize it, like authentic, whatever the word means that makes it authentic to your actual heart experience, not your mind, but your heart experience, where your intuition sifts up from and into. Because your gut will tell you from experience, then go into your heart, and then that will give you the authentic, positive standpoint to experience the situation from a broader perspective that doesn't end up in victim mode, doesn't end up in drama, but just more like, in other words, just step back whenever you start feeling convoluted. Step back whenever you're starting feeling in resistance. Step back and say, if we're all one, which we are, if we're all here to learn and teach off each other, sharpen each other, there's that sword against the other, sharpening that sword up by having these relationships, having these experiences, and choosing to flow with each other as opposed to fight each other. You got to remember you're that powerful. You got to remember we're that united. We're that connected. Our energies are intertwined. Balls and circles of energy all around each other. We feel each other, but if we're projecting, if we're presuming, if we're assuming all these different things about each other, and we're not coming from our heart, we're coming from whatever poor little mind created, because we put one negative thought on top of another negative thought on top of another negative thought on top of another fucking negative thought. You are now fucktarded. You're just, and it's gonna take a shovel to dig yourself out of it. Or you can just release it and say, hey, let's start over. And if you're lucky and blessed enough, and I know this is not the situation for everyone, and herein lies the blessing. If you are blessed enough to know that if you say, I'm not going to assume what the other person is feeling the way I feel, or understands the way I feel, or should understand the way I feel. If you stop resisting and stop putting that pressure on the outside world, and instead clear your own slate and be the creator of the situation by putting positive energy out there. The power that comes with that, the freedom that comes with that, because now it's your responsibility to create that positive environment in which no one that comes around you can ultimately fight or go against or resist, because everybody ultimately just wants to be okay. Everybody around you just wants to be supported, just wants to be assured. So, start with yourself. Know you are loved. Know others want to be loved. Nobody wants to be in a battle. Nobody needs to be responsible for anybody else's responsibilities other than yourself. I hope this makes sense to those of you that need to hear it. Let me finish this off. Notice the many ways you ask for what you want from others. Are you as clear as you would like to be? Because if you're not clear within yourself and you're stuck in your stories, you're not going to get very far. You're going to make others that love you work really hard to get to a place where they can help you. And if you're... No, I'm sorry. I really feel that whoever is hearing this tonight knows enough. Hell, if you're here, you know enough to know that we really are not ever alone. You really are part of a community. You really are part of the whole. It's too late in the game to think that you're a lone wolf. Not in this timeline, not in this dimension that we're creating as a whole through this clusterfuck that is 2020 and into 2021. It's time to create the positive. It's a responsibility to start looking at the positive and creating it all around us, because the energy is available for it. So use it. Stop resisting. Stop fighting. Stop struggling. Stop assuming. Are you as clear as you would like to be? Forgive yourself. Know your power. And create a higher vibrational moment. After another, after another, after another. Thank them in, okay, who offers reassurance to you when you need it? Who is that? Should be yourself. Should be your higher self. Hey, higher selves, they're all there for us. We're part of a unit that includes each of us having higher selves. Ask your higher self, they know what's up. Don't fight with them, just go with the flow of it. Thank them in a unique way today for being an important person in your life. God, I hope that person is yourself. Now, as a tidbit, in a completely unrelated way, but not really. Not really. This is actually from a channeling that a gentleman named Phil Good. You can find him on YouTube. It's PHIL Good. Feel Good. Sounds like a porno name, but whatever. No, he's awesome. And he did a video the other day that just was incredible. Incredible. It was brilliant. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. So, Phil Good was talking to his, whatever he talks to. Spirit, let me relay this properly. Remember the last time that you were in the middle of a situation. Hi, Kina. That you were in the middle of a situation. One of those dramatic turning of point situations. And I know, Mija. And you remember that little voice in the back of your head, very quietly, very faintly going, don't do it. Or skip this. Or even, and I'll add this, which was different from the video, dead silence. Now, Phil Good was talking about those moments where you hear a voice in the back of your head saying, don't do it, or don't bother, go a different direction, and you don't go a different direction. But I'm going to bring in, when that situation was brought up, I remembered the last situation in which everything should have been freaking out on every level. Instead, I heard silence. And I was able to move from a very dramatic situation into a completely different paradigm. I mean, my life completely shifted timelines because I made a huge decision to move forward out of the timeline I was in. But back to what Phil Good was saying. Phil was saying that in those times when you hear, you're remember and thinking back on it, recognize that the thing, the person, the whisper you were hearing was you now. Your future self talking to you back then, trying to help you. Or in my case, remembering the memory that came up was the silence I heard and how I just proceeded out of the situation, which should have been really attachment driven and dramatic, and instead I just left. I said, okay, and I left because I heard silence and I felt a lot of courage and strength to just move on in my new direction. Well, that was because the Jeanette that I'm here now is loving the freak out of life. And I feel so blessed and so perfectly situated. That's why this self was speaking to myself in that moment, like a year and a half ago, and saying nothing other than the emotion of courage and strength and stewardness to go forward out of that situation. So the reason I bring that up in the end here is to say, take a moment to meditate and whisper those reassurances of the situations that you know you were led. If it was a negative one and you're like, I should have listened to myself, go back in that meditation state and say, reassure yourself that it's okay because you've made it. you still made it. You're still okay now. You're not dead. You still survived it. Just start making a relationship with yourself in that way so that you can now recognize that your future self, your higher self, your future self is able to communicate to your now person, just like you were able to now to communicate to that person that you were in the past. And recognize that that whisper you hear when you're making decisions is you trying to guide you, and develop that relationship within yourselves so that more and more in the future you're able to make positive decisions in a way that's reassured in your heart, because it's your future self giving you those directions. And it's you're now looking back going, oh, that whisper was me, and I'm gonna go, okay, that was a good call, or I'm glad I listened, go me, or next time I'm gonna listen to my little voice, because that little voice is me. All right, guys, much love, namaste, and good night.